John Fehrenbach, thank you very much, man. I appreciate you. And um, by the way, everybody, I don't like pay John Fehrenbach to hold up those books and talk nicely about it. And I know he's a sincere man, and so I hear that, I accept it, I take it in. I'm grateful that it's been meaningful to you. I think about, and this is not my training tonight, but just because you had the books, I think about that one piece of this Legal Shield journey. Because when I came here at 28 years old, I had a lot of problems, and we can talk about those another night. But I hadn't read a book in 10 years. That really kind of was the reason I had so many problems. I hadn't read a book in 10 years because I left high school and I left behind the teachers that told me I had to read books, otherwise I'd get in trouble. And so the minute I didn't have anybody making me read, I stopped reading. And of course, everything fell apart, not all at once, but over time. Then I came here to Legal Shield, and I'm immediately, just like John was talking about our book of the month, I was immediately being recommended books by people who'd become millionaires in America. I would have had to be an idiot to not accept that invitation and start reading those books. Sometimes you hear me say, "Let Legal Shield change you." I remember that was the first change when I said I'll read the books that millionaires are recommending, the books that they've read that have meant so much to them that they want me to read them too. And then fast forward to not just a reader of books. And by the way, I don't love sitting down and reading today any more than I did in high school, but I love what I get from reading, and so I do it. And that's really what has led to the books that I've written so far. And by the way, if you're one of the folks today that is in a situation I was in before On Purpose came out, which is, that you have a book inside of you, let me be a voice of encouragement and say, please let that story out. Write it down. The world needs your story. All have a story to tell. And it's only the bravest and most courageous that put it down on paper. I'll say one other thing about John Fehrenbach before I let him off the hook. He came here and he hosted tonight on approximately about 5 minutes notice. I mean, he'd been busy. Everybody's busy, of course, leading up to the event. I prepared some information I needed him to go over, and he jumped at the chance, even though he had no preparation, to take care of that. So we salute you, sir, for your leadership and always being ready to jump in and help out whenever possible. One other group I want to congratulate. Everybody else that's here assembled live, and those of you that are watching this on a replay. You're choosing this over something else every single time, whether it's live or a replay. Every single time you're choosing to participate in your rescue, to participate in going somewhere else instead of staying where you are. You're choosing to learn something new and write it down. You're choosing to let something seep in that might change your worldview, and I think that's courageous. I wonder what my life would have been like if in between my childhood and 28 years old, which is when I came to this company, if I had any type, even a percentage of the access to wisdom, motivation, and personal development that I gained when I came here. I wonder how much further I could have gotten, because once I assimilated into this world, once I joined in, and not just joined the company, but joined and participated in this environment, which used to be conference calls. Once I started surrounding myself with the big thinkers and the big doers, my life started to change almost immediately. And frankly, if I'm being totally honest, and I will get to my prepared statement here in a minute, if I'm being totally honest, my life changed in ways I didn't even know that it needed to change. I didn't, I mean, I wanted my finances to change. That's why I joined. I wanted to be the boss instead of have a boss. That was my motivation. But so much more has happened over the years. And I just hope, especially if you're new in your Legal Shield journey, that you see it as a journey. That's not just something we say because it sounds good. I want you to take these steps towards a brighter tomorrow. And let's just get into this, because I find myself, when I prepare to talk to you at this point in the calendar month, we always kind of fall back into a conversation about time, about ticking clocks, about the fact that you never get time back, that the time goes by anyway. Things that I say, I'm just always very aware of time. So take a good hard look at where we are right now. We're standing at the tail end of the month of May. The days are ticking by. The clock is running. And tonight, we can't just have another casual meeting. You know why we can't be casual? Because some of you are brand new and you need this to work. Some of you, you joined this company and you are hoping this is real. It is, by the way, but you haven't had that revelation yet of how real this is. So you're secretly wondering, is another shoe going to drop? Am I going to find out it's not all that I hoped it would be? Some of you have been around for a while, but you haven't had the success you wanted as fast as you'd like to have it. But the clock is running, the days are ticking, and tonight we cannot just be casual. I won't allow it. I won't participate in a casual get together tonight. I don't want to just go over like best practices because we have great training on that. So you know what I want to talk about? I've got some time with you tonight. I want to talk about your legacy. We're here to talk about your legal shield business. I came here to share with you some thoughts about your future. And perhaps, bold as it may be, the line in the sand that separates those who watch history from those who write history. I want you to think about why you joined in tonight. I mean, you saw a text message or you got a reminder email or pinged from your calendar because you set it up. But you made a choice. There's something else you could have done. And you didn't click that link just to pass the time, not because you're bored and you said, hey, listen, I got nothing else to do. Let me just see what these guys have to say. I hope not. I hope you logged on because you have a vision. I hope you're here tonight because you have a burning desire for something bigger. I'll bet you want freedom, leverage. You want to know that the work you put in today is building a wall of security around your family. And because of that wall of security around your family, that nothing can tear it down and it really becomes security. But let's be entirely honest with each other tonight. I won't lead you astray. I didn't come here to waste your time or mine. So let's say what really needs to be said, that vision without execution is just a daydream. I do work hard to help other adults build the vision, dream again, because when so many people, by the time they get to me, they've spent so much time protecting themselves from disappointment that they forgot how to think about a brighter tomorrow. And daydreaming about a better tomorrow. I'm not talking about winning the Powerball. I'm talking about being the hero in your own story. A brighter tomorrow. Dreaming about that's like a muscle, and if you don't use it, it will atrophy. And that's where I find most people when I finally get a chance to work with them. So vision without execution is just a daydream, and execution is measured by what you do when the deadline is staring you right in the face. And we have a fun business, but it is a business. It's fun, but it's still a business, and it operates on the calendar month. And right now, the month of May is looking you right in the eyes, isn't it? So the question isn't how much time is left on the calendar. The question becomes, at this point in the month, how much fight is left in you? So let's go on a little journey together tonight. Let's look back at the giants whose shoulders we stand on. Let's look at the incredible history of this company's great crusade. And then we're going to look at the immediate, urgent, non-negotiable target that every single person that's here with us tonight should be focused on before the clock strikes midnight on May 31st. Performance Club. By the time we finish tonight, you will not just have a strategy, you will have a fire in your belly. If I do this right, you will have clarity in your mind and a massive, unstoppable drive to finish this month as a champion. So if you're ready to make history, let's lock in right now. Let's get to this. Because to know where you're going, you have to understand where you came from. And sometimes in the day-to-day hustle of building a business, making calls, texting people the videos, staring down the potential for rejection, we forget what we're actually holding in our hands. We lose sight of the sheer magnitude of the vehicle that we belong to. Legal Shield did not happen to you by accident. Now, it happened to Harlan Stonecipher by accident, but it didn't happen to you by accident. It wasn't overnight invention by some tech company in a garage looking for a quick payout. This company was born from Harlan's crisis. It was born out of a moment of profound injustice. And you've hopefully heard this story more than once already, even if you're new. Harlan Stonecipher's story, our founder. Harlan was a man of integrity, a hard worker, a regular guy, driving down the highway in 1969 when his life changed in the fraction of a second. And then he got to change all of our lives too. But before I get ahead of myself, let's stay there. A head-on collision, not his fault. He survived. Medical bills were staggering, but then the real hurdle, the legal battle. Harlan Stonecipher found himself facing a system that didn't care how right he was. The system only cared how much money he had to pay for a lawyer. And even though he was the victim, he was nearly wiped out financially just trying to defend his rights. Think about it. This is half a century ago. He looked at that broken system and he made a decision. He said, never again. Now, we've all said that for ourselves, but he didn't say it just for himself. He said it for every ordinary, hardworking citizen who was one legal issue away from financial ruin. Think about the courage that took. He's a school teacher. In 1972, he launched what would become this incredible multi-billion-dollar company. He created an entirely new industry. He didn't just start a business, he started a literal crusade for justice. And people laughed at him. The legal establishment at the time looked down on him. They told him it was impossible to do it. They told him you can't commoditize legal care and deliver it that way. They told him the average person didn't need it or wouldn't understand it. But Harlan Stonecipher had something that the critics didn't have. He had a purpose. He had a deep, unshakable belief that equal justice under law shouldn't just be a slogan carved into the marble of the Supreme Court building, that it should be a reality lived every day on Main Street. And to understand why some people succeed at the highest level while others stay grounded, let's look back at the turn of the century to a massive, heavily funded race to achieve human flight. You know I love the Wright Brothers story. But do you know that the government gave huge grants to a man named Samuel Pierpont Langley? He was a distinguished scientist, a Harvard regular, well-funded, backed by the finest minds and the heaviest pockets of the War Department. He had the best PR team money could buy. Everyone assumed that he would change the world. Meanwhile, in Dayton, Ohio, two brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright, had none of that. They ran a bicycle shop. They didn't have government grants. They didn't have a PR firm. They funded their passion using the profits from selling bikes. But there was a difference. Samuel Pierpont Langley was motivated by fame and wealth. The Wright brothers were motivated by a cause. They believed with every fiber of their being that if humanity could fly, it would change the world forever. They carried a vision. And on December 17th, 1903, on a freezing day in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, it wasn't the heavily funded corporate giant that took to the sky, it was the bicycle mechanics. Harlan Stonecipher was our Wright brother. He didn't have the backing of the American Bar Association. He didn't have millions in venture capital. He had a bicycle shop budget and an unshakable purpose to bring justice to the average family. When you're out there talking to prospects, are you operating like Langley, just chasing a quick point or a fast buck? Or are you operating like the Wright brothers, driven by the absolute conviction that the person on the other end of the conversation desperately needs what you have? Purpose-driven leaders don't stop when they're tired. They fly because they must. And Performance Club is how we measure your flight time. Think about the legacy we inherit. We went as a company from a tiny office in Ada, Oklahoma, to a massive powerhouse protecting millions of lives across North America. We partnered with the top provider law firms on the continent, created an infrastructure so powerful that today, a mother, a truck driver, a small business owner can press a button on a smartphone and instantly have an equalizer in their pocket. You're not a salesperson, you're a freedom fighter. You're an ambassador for a concept that has stood the test of time. When you make a call tomorrow, you are backed by 50 years of operational excellence. You're backed by the dreams and the sweat and the tears of pioneers who refused to let this flame die out. This is your history. That is your foundation. That is the rock solid certainty of Legal Shield. So here's the question. The question we have to ask each other tonight, that we have to ask ourselves in the mirror when we wrap up. If the foundation is that strong, why isn't everyone winning at the highest level? If the product is undeniable and the history is legendary, what makes the difference between the associate who creates total financial independence and the associate who just wanders around the edges of this business? Folks, it comes down to the stories we tell ourselves. Every single day you write a story, and right now, as we approach the end of May, there are only 2 stories being written in this team. Before you choose your story, let's look back at one more historical event. And as I've mentioned before, for those of you that find it tedious that you get a history lesson from Jim Tanner every time I speak, blame all the people that text me and say they like it, because they're the ones causing it to keep happening. Let's look at April 1970, Apollo 13. The Apollo 13 spacecraft is 200,000 miles away from Earth, basically hurtling through the vacuum of space when an oxygen tank explodes. Hopefully you've seen this incredible movie with Tom Hanks. It's in an instant, the mission changes from landing on the moon to a desperate fight for survival. The crew is freezing. The power is draining. Carbon dioxide levels are rising to toxic levels. And the clock on these people is ticking down to 0. Back in Houston, the flight directors, the engineers, they're staring at a problem that has never been solved. On paper, it was impossible. They didn't have the right parts, they didn't have the time, and the standard procedures said the crew was lost. But Flight Director Gene Kranz stood before his team, locked the doors, and gave an order that defined a generation. Here's what he said. He said, when you leave this room, failure is not an option. We are not losing this crew. And he didn't let them look at the manual of what couldn't be done. He made them look at what they had in their hands. They took random spare parts, cardboard, plastic bags, whatever was on the ship with those astronauts, and they engineered a solution under tremendous pressure and brought those astronauts safely home. Now, let's look at the 2 stories being written in our business right now. Story number 1 is the story of the victim. It's the story of the person who looks at the calendar right now and says, well, the month's almost over. I didn't get the traction I wanted early on. People are busy. The weather's getting nice. Everybody is thinking about the upcoming holiday. I'll just wait, and I'll hit it hard in June. June! You wait and see. June will be my month. Have you ever said that to yourself? Be honest. Next month will be my month. I lived there. I can tell you for sure I lived there. Let me tell you the brutal truth about next month. Next month is a mythical land where no business is ever built, no checks are ever cut, and no dreams are ever realized. Because next month is where goals go to die. When you tell yourself the story that May is already over, you are giving yourself permission to quit. You are letting yourself off the hook. You're choosing comfort over legacy. And worst of all, you're building a habit of starting strong and finishing weak. And the thing is, how you finish anything is how you finish everything. If you train your brain to coast during the last 10 days of May, you'll coast during the last 10 days of June and the last 10 days of July. And before you know it, another year has slipped through your fingers. Let's look at story number 2. The story of the victor. The victor adopts Gene Kranz mindset. The victor looks at the exact same calendar, the exact same 10 days, and says, failure is not an option. They say this is where champions are made. This is the fourth quarter. This is 2 minutes left on the clock, down by 4, and I have the ball. This is where I dig deep. This is where I show my team, my family, and myself exactly what I'm made of. The victor doesn't care that it's late in the month. The victor knows that more volume, more recruiting, and more production happens in the final week of the month than in the first 3 weeks combined, if you have the courage to press the gas pedal. So what does that mean? It means we can stop focusing on the time you lost early in the month. You can focus on the tools you have in your hands now. You have the videos, you have the Zoom presentations, you have your phone, and you have your story. We don't accept a 0 on the scoreboard. We don't abandon the mission just because it got tough late in the game. We engineer the win. We pick up the phone and we get our names on that performance club list before the clock runs out. Jim Rohn taught us about the law of sowing and reaping. He said you cannot cheat the seasons. Folks, May is the season of labor. May is the season of protecting the crops. You don't get to rest just because you're tired. You rest when the work is done. Les Brown used to say, it's not over until I win. He didn't say it's not over until the final week of the month. He said defiantly, it's not over until I win. Are you winning right now? If the answer is no, then your workday hasn't ended. Your phone needn't be silent. Your computer shouldn't be powered off. I'll bet if you came here on a Thursday night, your Legal Shield business is not a hobby. So let me warn you, if you treat it like a hobby, it'll cost you money like a hobby. It'll eat up your time. But if you treat it like a multi-million-dollar enterprise, if you treat it with the respect, the urgency, the intensity that Harlan Stonecipher treated it with, when he was fighting for its survival, it'll pay you like a fortune. So let's wrap up. Let's get tactical. Let's bring it down to concrete metrics that define your health in this business. If you want to know if you're truly winning in a business, or if you're just playing dress up, there's one single metric that never lies at Legal Shield. It is Performance Club. It's the heartbeat of the company. It's the gold standard. It's the non-negotiable baseline of leadership. Performance Club is not an optional luxury for the elite. It's the foundation of your residual income. It's the proof you're consistently moving the needle. It means you're enrolling members, you're bringing in new associates, and you're teaching your team to do the same. And when you qualify for Performance Club, you're unlocking the true power of this compensation plan. Because that means you're qualifying for cash bonuses, for trips. You're signaling to our home office, to your leadership, and most importantly, to your own team, that you're serious. But it goes deeper than that. This is about duplication. In our business, you cannot teach what you do not know, and you cannot lead where you will not go. You cannot look an associate in the eye and tell them to go out and qualify for Performance Club if you're not doing it yourself. Because leadership is not done from the back of the room shouting orders. Leadership is done from the front of the pack, cutting through the wind, setting the pace, and showing them the way. And if you want a team that qualifies for Performance Club, you must be the first one on the scoreboard. If you want a team that works until the final midnight of the month, you have to be on the phone making calls at 11 p.m. And that's why I love having these honest, transparent conversations with you. Because yes, the big money is available, but it requires some adjustments. So look at where we are in May. We have a handful of days left. Maybe you're already here and you have your points. You kind of checked out on me tonight. You're already qualified. If that's you, though, let me give you a warning. Don't coast. A leader who qualifies early doesn't stop. A leader who qualifies early goes back into the trenches to help their people qualify. Your job isn't done until every single person in your team that wants it has crossed the finish line with you. So look at your group, look at your roster. Who's one membership away? Who's 2 points away? And now you can go roll up your sleeves and help them close the gap. And what if you're sitting there tonight and you've got 0 points? What if you haven't even started your May qualification yet? Listen, I promise the game is not over. Do you know how fast this business can change? You are one conversation away from a breakthrough, one presentation away from finding a runner, one executive or one small business owner away from moving 10, 20, 50 memberships in a single shot. If you decide right now in your heart that failure is not an option, the universe will move out of your way. So I would pull up your back office tonight, make that step 1. Know exactly where you stand. No guessing, no assuming, look at the numbers. And then step 2, write down the names of every prospect who's seen the video, attended a Zoom presentation, heard the story this month but hasn't made a decision yet. That's your follow-up list. And number 3, commit to a daily number of exposures between now and May 31st, and you decide. Not a weekly number, by the way, but a number daily. Is it going to be 3 presentations, 5, whatever it takes to push you over the line? Do not allow the month of May to close with your name left off the qualifier list. We want you on this trip with us next year. Treat your Performance Club qualification as if your entire mortgage depended on it. Because while your mortgage might not depend on this specific month, your ultimate freedom absolutely does. And I'll wrap up with this. To understand how fast a situation can turn around, how quickly you can change everything, when you decide to take massive action, one more history lesson, December 1944. The Allies are caught off guard by a massive surprise German counteroffensive in the forest of the Ardennes. It becomes known as the Battle of the Bulge. The 101st Airborne is completely surrounded in this critical town of Bastogne. They're out of cold weather gear, out of ammunition, and facing certain destruction. The Allied Supreme Command meets. It's a tense, somber moment in a bunker. The situation looks completely hopeless. And General Eisenhower turns to General George Patton and asks, George, how long will it take you to turn your entire Third Army around, counterattack, and rescue? Experts said it would take weeks to move an entire army in the dead of winter. Patton looked at the clock and he said, inside of 72 hours. They thought he was insane. They thought it was impossible to change direction that fast. But Patton didn't wait. He had already anticipated the moment. He pivoted his entire force through the snow, pushed his men through the night, broke through the enemy lines, and rescued them ahead of schedule. He changed the course of the entire war because he refused to accept the standard timeline. Some of you are looking at your back office, looking at your numbers right now, and you feel surrounded. You feel like the month has caught you off guard, that the clock is against you, and that you're out of momentum, and you're telling yourself, it takes weeks to build a business. I'm telling you tonight, channel your inner Patton. You can pivot your entire business in the next 72 hours. You can change your posture, pick up the phone, rally your current associates, and execute a late month blitz that completely shatters expectations. History doesn't care how the month started. History only remembers who broke through the lines at the midnight hour to secure the victory. That means you can get on board, get your team qualified, and win the battle. The history has been laid out. The infrastructure is here. The tools are in your hand. You have the Zoom showcase events that we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night. You got the videos, the recruiting funnel. You have the support of the greatest leadership network in the world. There are no excuses left, which means that there's only execution. I want you to think about how it's going to feel on June 1st. Imagine waking up in the morning of June 1st, pouring your coffee, opening up your back office, and seeing your name clearly listed as a May Performance Club qualifier. Locking in that first important step to go with us on the trip next year. Imagine the pride. Imagine the text messages back and forth through your team. Imagine looking at your family and knowing that when the pressure was on, you delivered. You didn't fold. You didn't make excuses. You didn't say, I'll wait until next month. You stood up, you fought, and you won. I share all this with you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because it wasn't in my nature to fight, and it wasn't in my nature to win. I learned that here. I'm not pretending that I understood all of this from birth, that I was poured out and able to be somebody that could talk to you about being brave and courageous in your business. I learned all of that here. That feeling of victory doesn't happen by accident. It is bought and paid for right now in the quiet hours late in the month. It's paid for when you make that extra phone call when you don't feel like it. It's paid for when you invite one more person to the next Zoom showcase. It's paid for when you refuse to let negativity or doubt into your mind. Let's remember who we are. We are Legal Shield Associates. We are the legacy of Harlan Stone Cipher. We are the disruptors of an industry. We are the protectors of families. We do not crawl across finish lines. We sprint across them. Let's challenge each other. Let's be each other's keeper. Let's challenge every single person watching this tonight. Let's make the next 10 days the most legendary run this team has ever seen. Let's burn up the phone lines. Let's pack out the presentations. Let's drive the numbers so high that Mr. Riches and our home office wonders what is happening in this organization. Let's get our minds right. Let's get our lists out. Let's clear our schedule of distractions because May is our month. This is your business. This is your moment. And what you do matters. And it's important, noble work. And I could not imagine doing it with anybody else.